immense pleasure to introduce Dr. H.K. Sardana. He will speak on teaching and research. If I start giving his detailed works, I think there won't be any time for the introduction. So I will just briefly describe his achievements. He is basically electronics engineer. He has done ME in electronics with distinction. He is PhD in engineering from University of Nottingham, UK. He has also done MBA from IGNOU. He has recipient of awards on Nehru Century British Fellowship in 1990. He was awarded BAD Fellowship Award again in 1990. He was deputed for assignments abroad in UK and availed Nehru Century British Fellowship, and in USA for presentation of research paper titled Automatic Image Database Generation from CAD for 3D Objects Recognition. His administrative experience is also of high level. He is heading computational instrumentation and heading human resource development department at CSIU. He is coordinator and professor academic of scientific and innovative research, chairman HRD on administrative matters, chairman patent and publication committee, and number of others. He has completed number of R&D projects, and he has to his credit substantial number of patents, as many as I would say, from various countries like USA, Israel, Korea, Canada, and the like. To name a few, the patents for multi-fiber optic 2D array device for sensing and localizing environment perturbation using speckle image processing from USA, fake document including fake currency detector using integrated transmission and reflective spectral response again from USA, fake currency detector using visual and automated integrated reflective spectral response again from USA, and likewise there are number of others from other countries. Presently he has undertaken 2 R&D projects which are sponsored by Ministry of Communications and IT, Government of India, and supra-institutional. A number of papers are published in various national and international journals. He has membership of professional and academic bodies like Reviewer MBA, Reviewer Defense Science Journal, Life Fellow IETE. He is coordinator and professor for CSI postgrad research program for engineers. He is also member of research degree committees like for Thapar University, Electronics and Communication Engineering Punjab University, Electronics and Communication Lovely Professional University Fagwara, University Institute of Information Technology CGS Indraprasth University. He is also a member of Board of Studies for BE ME Punjab University Chandigarh, ME Computer Science Punjab University Chandigarh, Advisory Committee for Punjab University Chandigarh, Advisory Committee Punjab University Chandigarh, and Indraprasth University, Lovely Professional University, and the like. So I won't take much time because I said that if I go into detail, it will take the full session. So I now request Vardi, our chief guest for this session, Dr. Sardana, to interact with you on teaching and research, which is very important, I would say, any engineer at any level in any institution. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Bedi, and I'm also thankful to Dr. Tulsi, who invited me for this very core to my heart session. And I owe later to this particular lecture because what Dr. Bedi just now told, my MBA project particularly, which was on technical education and training, was conceived, of course, with my education in MBA and other experience, but most of the research work was done through Knitter library and journals from the library. And I am thankful, and it's my gratitude to express it today from the beginning, at the outset of this lecture, that some of the publications come in engineering education out of that work. So, in fact, today's presentation, if I share with you in terms of the summary, is an indication of how my career in engineering as scientist and my own education, which started, as she told, after the graduation when I joined the organization. So the whole education has been through the career, and the experiences with Knitter and other educational institutions where I could interact with students and faculty as visiting faculty or invited lectures. And with that, what Madam just told was the Academy of Scientific and Innovative Research, wherein I am proud to be part of it. And my introduction is not just as a scientist from CSR, CSIO, but also as a professor in Academy of Scientific and Innovative Research. And in fact, a dual designation of that kind brings me proudly here to share with you what the topic I chose from the input that I got from Madam Tulsi as engineering education and research. How we can, at least I can share my life experiences on these two aspects. And I'll just give the summary of this presentation and see how we evolve. And pardon me if I have to say a few things about me, not because as an introduction of my own, but as a simple example or a statistic which any CSR scientist can now show with the appointments that I can share with you with pride that my colleagues received yesterday. 70 professor or assistant professor appointments were received yesterday, though we have been working for ACSR since 2009 onwards. And as you know, this academy is working for the post-graduation program in research and engineering for the recruitments that we do in CSR, and now full-fledged under the Act of Parliament is a kind of institution of national importance with PhDs and MTechs and integrated MTech PhD programs that we do. So in a way, CSR as a model and I only as an example is now showing you how education, particularly engineering education and research, have to be merged, or rather it's pity that we are saying here that as a faculty, which I show here, role of faculty in institution and society is to see that this is merged. Unfortunately, in our country, that I remember our students sometimes say that how is that institution, particularly engineering educations, are working separately and research institutions are working separately. They have this model in mind that in our country, as if they are separate. This lecture particularly, I would say, congratulating the designers of this program that this topic has been brought, is very relevant for our own nation. And the participants of this program who are attending, and I believe if they can propagate the message that role of faculty is now to maintain this balance. Without this balance, either of that will not be complete. So that's really my initial burst of the issues that come in my mind, because this is not so in other developed nations. Developed nations do have this merger, or there is no issue of academic institutions or research institutions working separately, so they all have a very good mix of that. So I have to bring very basic things and make my points through foundations of science and education as part of the next point, other than your role as faculty towards the society. So we'll have to go back to our basics from engineering education to the fundamentals, the foundations of science and education. And then we will also see as a society's role where we produce engineers. What are the issues what are the traits, what are the inherent traits that an engineering student comes to you after his 12th or any other schooling, and then what are the things that you can improve. So there has to be a model of a young boy or girl who has some internal inherent traits and attributes. So this was part of my MBA project. So I'll share with you some of the engineering education, training particularly, that they go for 6 months, in which some of these attributes were studied, and it was studied to see how they improve. So some research will be visible to you in this presentation, and then we'll see what are the things that we have to focus. We as a faculty, for engineering students, what is our scope and focus with what we get from schools and other institutions to start with. And it, of course, it goes on to apply, as I said, that we work for post-graduation and research PhD degrees. So we'll see how fresh engineering education starts with a school child and how we go into higher education. So overall broad areas and emphasis will be discussed, and then we'll have conclusions and some discussion and questions. So I mentioned CSR and ACSR, the name sounds similar. I try to give you my career information as a simple, modest example, but definitely the overall model is CSR and ACSR, where we are showing that we in India have merged it. We have brought in education. Probably we were starving for education, you can say instinct that was required, that was visible somewhere through indirect means, like I gave you examples of interacting with the educational institution. So the education has been part of my career, and research has been the prime career, and it so happened that I also chose to work for MBA in HRM. So these things put together in a way, brought me in the organization to bring in engineering education as the other facet of research. So that is what, in a way, I am trying to share with you today, and that's the reason of sharing with joy all the life experiences that I have. So it's not a kind of material that we will share today. It's more of feelings and experience and opinions that emerge, and the message that we take home will be the content of today's discussion. And I hope you will share with me and have some duration, 45 minutes to 1 hour that we have, wherein we really try to revisit our role and how we can improve. So I'll start with individual as faculty, your role as faculty in the institution, and I'm just considering organically as if you are at an atomic level, although you represent an institution where huge number, particularly education institutions, have the maximum number of, you can say, participants from the society as students and from the faculty as members who intervene in their career and life. So on one hand we have individual, your role, and on the other hand institution as an organic full structure is responsible for the society. So society is being evolved based on the overall institution, and now the number of institutions we are growing with in the country, the quantity and the quality that we are increasing with, this discussion has become again relevant. Now, learning as a regular means has been the heuristic or the principle that I can share with you as far as my own life career is concerned, and I would share issues like what I learned from you, that student development is your prime issue as faculty, where classroom teaching, project working, placements are regular issues. Then you come here or you visit institutions for higher education. There are continuation of education, continuing education programs, higher degrees, workshops, retraining, relearning are ways of working for good academic institution. Then comes faculty development, including short training and all those programs that we do. This is all that is well known to you. The point I'm trying to say is, why is that we are asked to bring in research element, are now later, if you see, renamed few years ago to bring in the term research into it. Education and research are integral part, and if you see the names of the institution, will carry this ER at the end as an indication that we need to consider this very clearly, that we need to balance them also. So we are not just pure academic, we are doing a lot of research, and why we are doing that is the discussion for the day. Now you consider slightly further resolved role. Of course, this is within the organization, within the institute you come and work for, where you are the center now. Around you find students, of course, primarily your materials, your raw material is all the students that you receive. And that is where you generate products, if I say the engineering terms that if I use, that you produce engineers for the nation. And then the nation, on the other hand, as a society, is waiting for the best, the relevant, the impactful, and the useful and applied kind of, research, engineering, science, technology that they can provide. Of course, I indicate here the other staff and other management, the functional management that you share, and of course, in private institutions particularly, the term top management, or even in other institutions, this would remain, who give strategy to the institution and consider such programs and research as emphasis from time to time, or other things to really modify, to intervene, to improve on the institutional rationale and working. So this is kind of a perspective that I show from the faculty within the four walls of the institute. And then it goes across, wherein you just model that yes, there is a society for whom we are working, and these kind of engineers are required. Sometimes the industries come in and let you know how they expect from the students, the engineers that you produce, and you keep getting a feedback. But where is the research element here? Probably invisible here, or part of our education and training that we give. We'll see now. But this is the perspective as a human, as a person in the institution is concerned. Now, when it comes to engineering now, it's now provocation that I mentioned. I use this kind of material for even the students to provoke, particularly the engineers, what they need to be aware, to show you, to show this kind of tree on one hand and the points that what is engineering basically. Is it just optimization of resources for all the activities, all the developments in the country? Is it too much optimization, too much misery of saving everything, cost optimization, minimization, or it is some kind of research which is considered a lavish, spending money, and also not so efficient kind of phenomena in any country's development. So are we contradicting, or is it really a balance that we need? And so what are the branches of this tree, if I put it that? If I show you the tree on the right, so somewhere we have some engineering, somewhere we have, as a tree we have branches. Maybe are they the branches of engineering? Is it a tree for engineering? And what is the stem? Is it a common engineering stem? So what are the roots? Are these the roots of the science? So what's the ground? What is the purpose? These are some of the issues that I wish that as a provocation, you keep these questions burning all the time, rather than me giving answers straight away. But I'm throwing some points before you. So what are the S&T levels? What are the developments in our country as far as S&T, that is science and technology, is concerned? What is the level of research and development we have? When we produce engineers for industry or other levels, we need to see all these things, that our education is relevant and is making an impact and is making the developments in the country. And then how do they express their creativity? Because engineers are not pure scientists or generating knowledge only. They are applying the knowledge. So they are the creativity built in, and their creativity is to serve the nation, towards serving the nation. Now, the issue is probably that for our country, that we seem to have missed some roots of science while teaching engineering. So we have taken it as a adjunct or distinct from science, and probably we have missed the scientific approach to engineering education. And in the country, we also considered that probably when we did engineering education ourselves, we considered probably that's the best education we should have. And in that process, we ignored, if I say, the importance of science, or underestimated or undermined. And fortunately, I, with my own career as example, was or chose to become a scientist as a career. So with engineering education, with science interventions or needs of physical sciences, I could at least come to some levels to bring into the roots of science towards the engineering education. And that's where I believe, it's my way of putting it, that you can have a different perspective, and then only we'll get into the importance of research also. So science is the systematic and formulated knowledge which can be, obtained by careful observations and interesting or playful experiments. So we can see whether it fits in our engineering education, or we leave it to applied sciences or other departments and forget after that. So rather than defining engineering, I have started with science and provocated on what is engineering. So I leave it to you to keeping this query in your mind, how the two relate and what are the differences, if there are any. Now, of course, look at this definition. Engineering is the discipline, art and profession of acquiring and applying scientific, mathematical, economic, social and practical knowledge to design and build structures, machines, devices, systems, materials and processes that safely realize solutions to the needs of society. So basically science is towards society, but it appears engineering is directly for the society. So you see the economics, the social, the practical, the mathematical and scientific of course remain the engineering elements, and towards making machines, devices and all that. So that's what is one way of defining engineering. Now are we into that? Are we at full balance of the two, that we are having knowledge and we are generating knowledge, or are we producing students? This exercise sometimes I play with students, and similarly it has been brought in with some minor changes to see whether it provocates the teachers, the engineering teachers, that are we on the left side or are we progressing to the right also? Are we left only or are we right? That's the issue here. So are we carrying, are we just maintaining attitude, or we are also having, it's for you or for us and also for the students that we produce, but are we towards curiosity and inspiration, or are we just maintaining an attitude? Are we having ideas only, or are we realizing them? Are we having, particularly with some programming, computer science and other areas wherein students are obsessed with the idea and code that they can produce, or they are also into research, wherein data is the mother of research? Are we into just knowledge that we have in our books, or are we incrementing the knowledge as knowledge plus plus? Are we into the positive feedback that we give to the students to encourage as a small child, or are we into negative feedback where we go towards stability? These are the issues that we learn from engineering education also. Are we following the competition as the motivator, or we are towards competencies that our engineering students should have, or the engineers in the industry should have? Are we generating confidence as a personal trait, or are we looking for the support of the society, where our works are indicated by the support that we receive from society? Are we into what we traditionally said as boxed thinker, never going beyond, or are we thinking out of box? So these are we into syllabus, or are we into literature? Are we into a closed book approach of examination, or are we saying, come, here is an open book exam, you do whatever you like to see in the book, and here is a question paper to solve? Are we into intelligence that we show as IQ that we can see from the childhood, or are we into the intellect of young or youth, or even the engineers that we produce for the industry? These are some of the provocation, firing of words before you, so that there are some pleasant and some kind of not so pleasant kind of provocation or curiosity that goes into. So it's like by way of throwing words before you as transformation through words. So what is research then? Why are we talking about research today? Is it a new word for the day? Is it a cutting edge word? No. This is probably the age-old word that research is required in the country, and the country can develop only with this basis. And of course, as I gave you examples, CSR and other research institutions, particularly defense, even now, have been working for research. We have different research institutions. Some of them and many of them are now getting into aligned with education as part of their activity. Many times they are forced to get into this education and training as activity just because they found that some of the education institutions could not produce manpower for, say, research. So it has been, I will not say very good reason, but this would have not been there at all. This problem should not have been there, that we were treating the two as separates. This is unfortunate. But now anyway, with the large number of institutions increasing, many of them learning education and research as a balance to start with, or some of the age-old mature research institutions like CSR, DRDO, BARC, etc. realized the need for education as part of their exercise. So it is high time that educational institutions also realize that they need to have an integral part of activities wherein the resources are deployed on research also. So basic research here, it is indicative of both basic and other, we will see, can be defined as the search for knowledge. So are we just having the knowledge that we have from other books or other sources, or are we searching for it? While searching, we are also generating new knowledge. That was the knowledge plus, or what we say, the research is also a way of generating the knowledge. So there are systematic investigations with, of course, with an open mind. See, when I said open book, it is definitely an open mind basically, which can consider the research. So we need to open up now to establish novel facts. So based on the existing knowledge, we then need to generate new facts, and which may be invisible to us, which may not be known to us. We need to build new connections, and usually following a scientific methodology. So the point here is that probably we have missed the scientific methodology or scientific basis of our engineering education. And then comes automatically the applied aspect of this research is engineering. So if you see, when we cluster our laboratories, we call them engineering sciences, physical sciences, chemical sciences, biological sciences. So we keep the word sciences all the way. Our way of clustering, or if I say branching the whole sciences, is towards sciences. Even if it is engineering, it is called engineering sciences and physical sciences and all that. To us, all such subjects are a kind of larger branches of science, including engineering as branch of science. Now, the most important part for placement point of view, if I say, when you look for engineers in the industry, what is that industry is looking at? In general, globally, industry is to make decisions. They have management for that. While engineers are also into management, or even for scientific and other matters of application of their knowledge, they have to make decisions. They have to make decisions to invest on materials, on products, on processes. How will anybody, any society, a nation, let engineers waste resources? So the decisions are to be made day by day, day and night, every day, every moment. So research is the basis for that. That is the point I am trying to say. So if you are not doing research, you are not making right decisions. So look at this. If we had ignored the research as our, the emphasis, we might have made wrong decisions also. So look at research and developments is required for products. So this R&D is not just for scientific or engineering areas. When you have to develop products, R&D. When you have to develop processes, there is another R&D. So then you have to develop services. Now our nation is into a lot of services, IT services and many services. They also have the same base, that is research and develop a service. You don't have any good product or any service to the nation, to the society, without having enough research. Even in marketing, if you see the advertisement and other areas, the commercial domain of the country, how we are developing and at what rate we are developing, it is all based on research. If you see, they call it marketing research. And fortunately, our country, and with the help of other countries who consider India as a consumer of the world, research in marketing has been reasonably, reasonably good. Of course, it may be that the consumers are also from the same nation. And of course, similar issues on research that you have in various areas. So it's not limiting here, but the point is, when you want to make decisions, even for your own shopping, for any decision that you make, the few initial searches and some kind of analysis will definitely be an integral part of your decision making. When you want to make an investment, any heavy investment, you will have some base of research to help you make a right decision. So when it comes to, with that kind of research as provocation again for decision making, we will inspire students from nature. Now the other end of science, which we sometimes miss and we limit ourselves to our branches of engineering, is that are we inspiring from the larger unifying nature? So what are the common elements of engineering? Is energy the common element? You will find there are unifying parameters, concepts, tools which can join us together towards stem and roots and the ground. That is why I am trying to say, are you inspiring, giving examples from other areas, from other branches of engineering? Are we aware? Are we inspiring them to say, forget if you have been into this branch of engineering, don't worry, you have all the means to know many other things through interdisciplinary areas. And if I say again example of ACSR as an institution has come only for interdisciplinary research. So just to bring in research from different areas, different experts, different institutions, collaborations, and a lot of research laboratories that we have in the country. So the issue is that there has to be a need for unification of ACSR is Academy of Scientific and Innovative Research. That's an institution now, it's a kind of meta university for CSR laboratory. So we as a whole are a set of laboratories, as a departments, 39 laboratories are under the CSR, and they can provide integrated MTech PhDs or MTechs separately and PhD separately in science and engineering. So for the engineering, as I mentioned, utilization of resources have to be there. It's not just cost minimization and cost optimization or miser approaches that we follow many times towards engineering. It is the larger utilization of resources, where natural resources are the prime. We may be saving our own limited resources, but we may be wasting our national resources. That is where many times the bad engineering can follow. Now, do we have examples to give during our education, class teaching, during our lectures? Are we giving examples of the stars, the sun, the earth, the sky, the air, the water the resources that we have around us? Are they depleting? Are we using them? Are we polluting them? Are we towards environment in general? So as a society, are we sensitizing them towards the environment? This environment is in many layers. So this universal kind of environment or climate is just an example of ultimate that you can give. And there are many layers of environment anyway in between. It is not just placement or industry and job as the only environment, as the only ecosystem. There is a whole nature to inspire from, and that is where the scientific approach comes to. These are few examples, and we'll have some more in other slides. So I'm trying to give now science and research as basis. So sciences, of course, I don't need to teach all that material. Few of the things interesting to us and some keywords that we can pick up, particularly for science and research, we can pick up the word as observation and in experiments. So are we following this kind of approach in our laboratory experiments, that we have observations and experiments, or as we are told that practicals or laboratory experiments are the worst that we have in our engineering education? So we need to see that. So science is also, look at the other word here. If I just use the keywords highlighted by yellow, that is curiosity, creativity, imagination, intuition, exploration, observation, replication of experiments. Are we able to replicate our experiments? That I conduct an experiment, that my paper or communication helps somebody else repeat the experiment and get the similar results, and have a confidence that yes, this has generated some knowledge that I can also understand. Interpretation of evidence. Somebody is giving an evidence of an hypothesis. Are we understanding it? Are we accepting, appreciating it? That yes, this makes a fact now. This can be added to the knowledge. Are we debating our evidence and any interpretations that follow? So these are the indications that we are telling you. Are we missing these keywords in our education? Are we predicting? That means, can we predict through our knowledge? Sometimes I say, if you can predict, you have the full understanding. Any phenomena you predict, that is your hypothesis also. But in general, as a routine, if you have the habit of predictions, you have a good understanding. Interpreting, whatever is happening, are you able to interpret? When we say you means you and your students and we all as a society, are we having these parameters as competencies in the students or in the students with some experience? Are we exploring natural or human-made phenomena? Are we exploring anything happening in nature? Are we discovering? So where do we go for engineering education without these? So also, as philosophy, some will see the science and research as knowledge, experimentation and processes. They sometimes see that this is a regular phenomena, eternal phenomena, where knowledge is the curiosity starting point and generation of it is always an issue. We always have some questions to answer, and that is in search of knowledge, we do keep, making efforts on science and research. Some take it as a very, very eternal phenomena, that it will always be there. And are we considering it with that kind of understanding? That it is a permanent, integral, eternal phenomena in our life and experiences and in career and education. Are we considering that way? One more slide on science and research, and then. So through science, we can have new knowledge, theories. So if you are teaching, disseminating knowledge to students, you need to see, are you a source of knowledge? Or are you just communicating the knowledge? Are you a processor or a value addition, or you are just a communicator? That's the provocation here. So do you have your own to add value addition? New knowledge that you did on your own, or it is just that you are trading the knowledge in a way. If you are just passing the knowledge from one source to the other, then we are trading the knowledge, or we may be doing some harmful, additions or deletions to it. So scientific debate and on observations and hypothesis. So are we generating hypotheses through our intuitions or through our predictions or through our studies, that if this is so, then this must be so. Then we prove it. So are we into hypothesis and proving the hypothesis? Are we into that phenomena? So these are again the questions. Now some reference here is to say that science is a creative process which attempts to discover and understand, thereby generating knowledge. Science is often viewed as both a product and a process. So it's 1987 Hart EP. So see, this is a product and a process together. So it's a kind of unification at every level that we need to come at. When you do philosophy, research degree in philosophy, that is PhD, you will come to these unifications if you generally follow the basic principles of scientific research, even in engineering sciences. Now, I don't need to give you the basic steps of research methodology that we do in all, you can say, ventures. When we start with, we identify the problem and state it in clear terms. Let me tell you, I have seen these steps given even in 10th school science education books. So there is no new material that I am sharing with you. Many things are just revisiting them, revising them, and considering them again if we have missed them. So we identify the problem, state it in clear terms, collect the data, look at the gaps, and then make a hypothesis that in this area there seems to be some lack of knowledge, something must be done, let me make a prediction, let me make a guess, let me make a hypothesis, and then let me do some experiments. After the guess, then I prove it. It's my own challenge, my own, you can say, bet with myself or with the society, where I declare and then verify. And that gives you qualification of degree. That's what any thesis work is about, MTech or PhD. But are we following it into hypothesis generation levels? And are we doing experiments and observations, which is just basic to science, and then concluding, then making a fact? then generating that, yes, I have added a knowledge to the society, to the community that I come from, to the community I join with, and the overall nation and international contributions. So are we into that level? These are the questions, these are the steps. Now, with that kind of science and research as the base, let me give you now, this might be new to you, for a mature audience, these are the studies on scientific research that indicate that science has these foundations. There are 4 foundations basically. And you will see some of them appear to be very individualistic, as if skills, knowledge and attitudes, maybe the traits of individuals. Yes, these are the traits of individuals. But these are the foundations of science. But do you have the skills of science? You need now as a nation. Do you have the enough knowledge? Do you carry the attitudes towards it? And then look at the other side, which I am now bringing, science and technology. So as science as a foundation is also responsible for its own science and technology, for the society and environment. So are we considering these 4 as the foundations, and are we having enough stand on these 4, or are we standing on say only knowledge, or only few things, or very poorly on any one of these, etc. So these are just to tell you, from the literature I could see these are the foundations of science. And engineering, where is engineering here? All over, particularly when it has a service to society and responsibility towards environment. That's where you see that. If I read in my own studies on MBA project which I shared, that environment education is the ultimate in engineering education. One of the literature that I studied indicated that if you, and many times if you see the poor engineering and the engineering education or engineers themselves, sometimes what they do are known to be harming the environment. If you see that, many times the engineers are blamed for generating products and processes and not caring for our environment. It is very common blame to engineers, and with some poor engineering education, this is bound to come. That is where this other side as main pillar I have shown, and this is not from my own experience. I will show you when I mentioned about engineering education, that project I have will have individual as engineer, as a student, and skills, knowledge, attitudes as a set of traits, and one more trait that I will show you, that is motivation. So basically, this slide actually indicates that we can have this foundation of science for the whole nation as these 3 common. Individuals will have attitudes, will have knowledge and skills. When you sum them up, you have individuals not knowledge, individuals skills, individuals attitudes, and the whole society and environment integrates from individual to the whole society. Now, continuing with the foundations of science, now that pink block that I mentioned was indicative of science, technology, society and environment. So you will find that STSC as one foundation. And then student needs to understand what you want to do for your students to get. What your teaching should do is to see that students understand these relationships. Do they understand between science and technology, or they are only towards engineering and technology, or only technology? Are they understanding the science with society? Are they understanding science with environment? Are they understanding technology with environment? Are they understanding society with environment? So these 4 elements STSC are together, and are they understanding their relationships? How one will affect the other? Engineering is not one-sided. Engineering is always a balance of the two. So design of any engineering product will be a balance, that it is doing good to the environment and also doing harm to the environment. We are using fuel for the automobiles from the environment. We are sucking the petrol, sucking other things, and then we are polluting the environment. So we need to see these. And we need to know that, not obsessed with the creativity, but knowing the responsibility towards environment as well. That is just to tell you that they must be aware of this. They must be made, well understood to form these relationships. Then number 2 is skills. What skills are you imparting them? What are the engineering education or engineering students' skill? What do they need to have? It is just the practicals that they can do, or design that they can do, that is engineering skills, or they are in general solving problems, maybe yes, but while solving problems, what do they do in between? Do they communicate? Yeah, maybe. Communication is our integral part of any job placements and all. But what are they able to communicate to the audience of this kind? Are they able to share their ideas and win the audience for proper project proposals? Can they look for research funding? Can they carry on a project of their own or with a team? Can they carry on with the team with good attitudes, with contribution from others? Can they make right decisions? Now the term right decisions. Are they making informed decisions? That they make decisions and inform very well, they are well informed and they can inform others. But this is the basis of making decision, and that's the best decision at the moment. That's the relevant decision that we can make. So do they have these skills? Knowledge, of course, remains the key element in any education. So I will be overemphasizing the term knowledge. However, instead of knowledge, I am rather emphasizing the term incremental knowledge. Knowledge generation. Knowledge plus that I mentioned. How do we enhance knowledge? Refine knowledge, improve on knowledge, add to knowledge, construct knowledge, or create new concepts. So basic understanding of new concepts from the available knowledge is a continuous process. That will happen if you interpret, integrate, and extend that knowledge. So basically it's knowledge and meta-knowledge and increase. It is not just knowledge, it is just variables, derivatives of the knowledge that I am talking about. And that is where derivatives of the knowledge is what we call research. Then attitudes. So maybe we don't talk about these in general, but I am now today bringing to you of course face these attitudes in general from the students, from faculty around and society in general. But what is that we have to do? What kind of attitudes we want our engineers to have? What do they need to have? Do they think about benefits to self? Or they think benefits to society also and the environment. That is the prime sensitivity. That do they carry that attitude that it is not that I me myself, or is it that they have attitude towards everything? That is the issue here. So is it the technical education leading to that, or we are just ignoring or accepting their attitudes as it is they come with? So are we adding to their improvements in attitudes? And the study that I did included part of improvements or changes in attitude during training or it was only for training, 6 months training. However, definitely some contribution from faculty and the industry were there. So in a way, it might be holistically to take that whole engineering education has to improve on attitudes and knowledge. Now this is just showing you the inherent attributes that I mentioned, that you might have engineers available to you as a student when they join, particularly for graduation, that they have some inherent, this was my hypothesis, and some ranking was done, and this indicates the lower the better, of course. Here lower rank means it is top level. So the best that the number one rank or close to number rank here was, you can see, imagination. And the next was observation, the third was communication, and there were others also which were brought in as others. There are many other traits. So these three were considered as the innate characteristics or attributes inherently available, as if they are born with. There may be debate on these, but that's how I conducted my research from the student faculty and from the industry professionals who trained them during 6 months. This was an indication of my research at that stage, 2001 onwards, that these are the observation, imagination. As you see, Einstein says imagination is more important than knowledge. So observation and imagination and even communication skills, though there is a lot of possibility that you can improve on communication by all kind of practices, but some inherent attributes, some inherent traits, at least I segmented them as these three as inherent, and there are 4 others which were considered for improvement due to education and training of engineering. So this is just to indicate the first bar, the one bar shows the mean values and also standard deviation available from the survey that was conducted from faculty and the professionals from industry. So basically it was a joint kind of survey that we started with, and the students were subjected to, faculty as a continuous observer during training, and they were available for 6 months project training with the industry. So this is in fact a research from that particular project. Now, what is our emphasis now? What is our emphasis? As role towards society for engineering education. So are we building scientific or science inquiry in their minds? Are we creating questions or are we giving answers? That is the issue here. Are we making them bubble with questions, or are we closing them through answers that we give, and then they are depressed and suppressed? Look at how you are producing them, how you are motivating them. I'll bring motivation and other issues also once again, but this is in between. I am taking the focus that we need to have. So one is inquiry, that is kind of purely inquest or inquiry towards science, towards discovery, towards understanding, towards making one own self as relevant to the society. And then he becomes problem solver. As an engineer qualified, the chores to become solver of the problems of the nation, and first creates the problem, first sensitive towards the problem. Many times we see that we say that the problem is that they can't see the problem. So many times this is also seen that there is a problem but they cannot see. So are we, when I say scientific inquiry, it also includes that are you seeing the problem? Are you seeing the possible benefits with the attitude that I said towards not just for self but for the society and environment together? These are the further issues that we are trying to say. And as I already mentioned, decision making emphasis is one that we need to keep. So these remain our prime basic focus in the education process. These are kind of principles that broadly we need to keep emphasizing every now and then in every venture that they take and we take. And then already given some indications on social and environment context of S&T. So they work in industry, okay, they work for the society, and I already mentioned that while making designs of say automobile or chemical industry, pharma, biological, medical, whatever, civil engineering, that every engineer in the country is known, not every engineer, the community of a particular area is known for some kind of attitude, some kind of behavior, some kind of, you can say, traits, and you need to see, are we having a respectable, proud and a balanced, you can say, image of the engineering as a career or as a profession. And then are we understanding? Now, as I mentioned earlier, the issue was, are we understanding towards science, technology, society and environment? So again, our understanding and their understanding of the relationships. So I already mentioned it, so it's again given here. Now there is another quote, there can be no greater contribution or more essential element to long-term environment strategies. Look at the long term. So the long-term environment is not a short-term issue. Environment is always a long-term issue. So engineering product and process may be short-term. Their product life may be 2 years, 3 years, and they are obsolete. But the environment is permanent. Environment is long-term, being affected by their attitudes, their style of working. So leading to sustainable development. See, why some student asked me this question, why is it we are talking about sustainable development? What is this sustainable development? An engineering student in Tech Chandigarh asked this question, and then I was happy to see that why is that engineers facing this problem of sustainable development? That their developments are not able to sustain or they are affecting the environment. Where lies the problem? So are we into that? Are we into sustainable environment or sustainable development? Are we spoiling or improving the environment? That's the issue through our products and processes. So this point says that respects the environment. See this sustainable development that respects the environment are the issues here. Beyond the education of future generation in matters relating to environment. So are we just generating the issues or are we making them relevant with their attitudes, their actions? So this is through a 1988 UNESCO report. So the point is that it is just sensitizing you towards the issues that globally the world knows and world follows, and probably if we have missed that development, this is the time to take these issues again. The issue that I have not raised yet is the motivation. Are we in any kind of research towards student considering this? Probably yes, when you find the students not attending a class, a particular faculty not finding a student interested in some subject, not able to do well, few individuals or a group or the whole class, and when you face the problem, then you consider motivation as a problem. And I have seen somebody raise this question in this audience, I mean not this particular audience, this kind of lecture, where somebody from an institution somewhere else says, we teachers are ourselves sometimes demotivated. So teachers, scientists, researchers cannot afford to be demotivated. They have to charge the batteries. If I call, many times I call motivation as just a battery, It's like you have to charge every day and keep it charged. And if teachers and researchers and pillars of the society say that they are demotivated, how will they motivate the students or motivate the others? So basically now I am bringing the individual element for you as a faculty and student as a attribute that he or she carries all the time towards progress. So motivation moves. Emotion, motivations move the candidate, move the person to do anything. If there is no motivation, there is no action. So motivation is towards action. So therefore this remains a very individualistic. That is why it was not shown in the foundations of science. However, it is foundation of an individual that individual goes with, and every moment, every time displays the energy that you draw from your body. If I put it in an engineering manner. So therefore now I am bringing this particular trait, and this was part of our study that I made during that MBA project on training and engineering education. So now this is an individual parameter. For the student, of course, I may not say this, of course, is also important for you to remain in full charge, fully motivated, and then disseminate the charge or motivation to others. And then, so look at how we find the students' motivation visible to you through your education. It's an old saying, they say if the child is happy, the child is learning. If the child is not happy, child is not learning. It's a straight, simple, age-old concept from the basics of any, education when the child starts going to school. So that applies here also. As long as the person is learning, the motivation has to be visibly, guiding force. And you as a mature, I would say observer, for you are observing them. For you, they are the products and processes. So you need to see that your curriculum, your style of teaching, this is directly from teaching to research, the topic that Dr. Tulsi asked for, is an indication that how you are teaching and what you are teaching and why you are teaching put together is maintaining that motivation, their continued interest. See, I many times say that interest is an indication of that motivation. Now, interest comes from the capital. You have interest in the bank when there is a capital in it. So, if there is a knowledge capital available, there is an interest. And that interest adds to the knowledge, and the cycle goes on. What makes this cycle go on is just that if the motivation is, giving a power to the circuit, so the human circuit is working. Otherwise, it just stands still, and the knowledge, you can say what happens to the stale, pale, and old knowledge and static. So this is a kind of charging that I want. I believe that you are, the slide here also shows, you need to know whom you are serving. So we need to remember that we are serving the society through these engineers that we produce. So as a teacher, as an educator, we need to see that they are always, fully charged. Whatever they do, they are charged. So that is the point here. And all syllabus, all material that you produce before them, present before them, is like what a mother gives to a child on the dining table. If the child is happily eating, the child is healthy. If the child is not taking it, you know what will happen. That applies to the material that you serve. So you are serving the material to the students, actually serving the society that way. So we need to see that your curriculum, and I'm sure NITER is and other institutions are always into that. But let me tell you, it is many times you are part of all curriculum development in various institutions, but there also it's not what you serve, it's how you serve. So curriculum is just an indicator of the material. It is also, and in fact more important, is how you serve. And you need to know why you serve. These are the issues, not just what you serve as curriculum. The other W's or other questions are also, or whom to serve. All W's, all questions need to be known while serving this education. So the lectures are serving opportunities. So are we doing some research on this? Like I did, are we generally doing and looking at that the students are always, what I raise these questions, are we having regular, say, questionnaire or feedback or teacher and student interviews? Are the managements doing this? Are they doing classroom observations, that how they are attending? Many times, of course, the faculty knows how the students are attending the class. But are these information data reaching other people who make strategies and directions to the institutions? So are we doing some research on it? That's the point here. Or we are assuming everything as that sure that no. If a student is taking admission, he or she has to be motivated. I have nothing to do with that. I mean, we can't have that kind of attitude. So are we considering the cognition levels? Are they improving? Are they developing effectively? No. And also, if required, do you consider them all equal at all times? Or you see that during, many times we hear that in students or in many coaching environments or in any class, many times there are groups and sections. So do we group them into similar competencies or similar cognition or other skill or other abilities? So do we do clustering like that? So that we can intervene better? So what do we do towards motivation of students? That's the question here. What kind of attitudes we are developing students with? I have already indicated, are we making them towards benefit of self only, or stopping at self, or going towards society and environment? That is the attitude that they need to be respectful for, not just self, but for everything else around them. Are we giving that attitude? Are we towards that? These are the questions. So are we now, after this attitude, that is structure of mind, the performance comes from the behavior that they do. Are they behaving? Is the youth, if I say engineering youth, behaving respectfully? Are they into any kind of, if I just indicate, are they into any kind of crimes? Or if I use the word, any kind of corruption? What are they into? So that way you get a feedback that our engineers produced in our institutions, are they behaving? Do you have respectable aspects, general aspects of their behavior? Because from the attitude, behavior will come performance. Their performance is out straight away from the behavior. Behaviors are in a kind of, you can smell the performance from the behavior. That is what, is a kind of intermediate indicator. So you can smell today what they will perform tomorrow. That way. And then attitudes are not so visible also. We need to know that this is like management or this is more like HR kind of concepts. But as a teacher who are part of HRD ministry, I believe that teachers are communicators, motivators and attitude builders, and they are basically nation builders that way. So that's the reason of bringing these education and research issues into this kind of discussion, that they will, they will not be visible also so easily. Sometimes you say, oh, well, a particular attitude is very easily visible, you strongly observe it. But most of the time it may not be visible. They are not as visible as skills or as knowledge that you test with exams or you test, their skills through projects or other things. So attitudes have to be seen. So the point is that are we in our own education research? Education and research is the discussion of the day, but education research is also research, which is a common issue for you. That you will have, all the time these monitored for students so that you develop these better. So you need to know the intricacies of, it is not just imparting knowledge, you need to see that these things also go hand in hand. And then it's a lifelong process. It's not a short process. It is also affected by the home, the school we came from. I already mentioned that many of these things they are not the only one to change or affect or observe this attitude. It comes from the larger part of the society. So whatever they do, whatever we have done to the society, it comes back to us. So it's not a simple process. The point is that, however, you have some active role to play and see how far we can play. That's also a kind of challenge in that research. Now, look at these 6 ways for our education discussion that we have. We can build. At least we can focus on these. We may not focus on everything else, but we have 6 ways to affect. At least 6 levels of attitude that we can consider. So first thing is that I mentioned, my topic for the day has been more on education towards science or base of science or scientific approach basically. So it's whether they have that kind of appreciation for science. Look at this. At the moment, if I say it may be rather otherwise. They may have rather no appreciation for science. I mean, they may not have, but it has been in the society for some time. Then do they have interest in science? It's not to just change from engineering to science. The idea is do they understand the roots of that engineering? So do they have this inquiry? So, and do they have collaboration? The point that we have not yet discussed. Do they believe in creativity of others that we can join with and then work together and share credits and have no conflicts? This is very challenging attitude actually. We all face, particularly even we in institutions have these problems. Do they have safety issue? Do they believe in high racing cars or driving at a higher speed or having safety also an attitude? When there is a safety, then there is a concern, then there is a sensitivity towards others. Otherwise there is no concern. The reason when I said crimes and accidents are indicative of lack of this attitude. And stewardship. Can they carry with stewardship? Can they lead? Can the engineers do at some sacrifice and at our own sometimes compromise, help the other person or other society member or some disabled, if I say, to be as sensitive, as respectful to others with a stewardship. Take a lead and give a helping hand and provide the whole kind of blossoming that we learn. So do they have that blossoming kind of approach as an attitude that always ready to help others, kind of. So these are, and then STSC I already mentioned. So do they have links? Are these 6 now linking towards science, technology, society and environment? Is this attitude building that STSC foundation of science? That is our job now. Look at these relationships that we are building today from these few words that we have brought in here in the discussion. Now, the words may appear very cliche that we are repeating things or we are saying the old stuff, but yes, with some kind of overlap in the discussion. So we are towards solving problems as skills, communicating, we mentioned earlier, and of course informed decision. So research decisions, not a decision that I'd like to do. It's a decision of the society or the institution or the organization department that I have. It is not my personal decision. So it is not that resources are deployed from my pocket. So the institution as a nation has to see that this is a very well researched decision of investing some effort or money or any material on something. So they need to have those skills, not just doing skills to how to material, how to form the material to make a product. They need to know how to buy the material, how to economically see that material is appropriately chosen, etc., etc. So that kind of skill, that they make a right decision based on research and work collaboratively. They cannot work alone. They need to work in team. The teams have to work in other teams. If you say Tata made nano car, there are hundreds of engineers who work together. A product is not made by one engineer. The product or process will be made by hundreds of engineers. Many times they will be geographically apart. Now multinationals will have people working all over the globe, maybe working different time in day and night, and how they collaborate, how they respect each other. Do they have skills of this kind? So then they have to have answering questions. Now, typical of any education and research, when we say vivas and thesis building, if there is no hypothesis generation, there is no hypothesis verification, there is no research approach, I cannot answer the questions. I have no knowledge, I have no informed decision, I have not researched the topic, I have made a decision, now there is a question, I cannot answer. How will I answer? So answering ability is generally, anyway, many of you would have seen, is part of the thesis viva that we people say. Raising questions is all the thesis work, but answering ability comes on the day of viva. That your knowledge is acceptable to others who have been in the subject for some time, who are somewhat experienced than you. So that is a kind of skill that we have, that skill of explaining also, answering. In general, having query and questions all the time, but at times, special times, we need to answer the society. We are answerable, that means we are responsible. That is the issue here. So do we impart those kind of skills? Now it is not just one skill now, few skills. A particular venture will have mix of skills and sequence of skills. A particular, like we say, one product is not made by one science principle or one person. So one whole venture is not by one skill alone. Multiple skills at a time and multiple skills one after the other also. So as a mix or as a sequence of skills. So do we know them to be competent to do one after the other, that if I do something now and immediately after 10 minutes I do something else. I make a lecture here and then I do something else after 1 hour. Or in a sequence. Not that I am saturated with one skill and then cannot do something else. That way. So it's like that. So skill over skills. So skill continue, wherein we have some management issues. I can quickly go on these. That can they initiate an idea, plan a project, perform and record the data for research, communicate means present it, do a teamwork. Are they able to analyze what they did, what others did? Are they able to read in between the lines? That means they can see beyond what is visible. Do they have that kind of sixth sense? Do they have intuition? So all those skills need to check in your. Now you may say, how we check them, how we monitor them. These things can be monitored on a day-to-day activities also. It's not just lecturing and taking exams. It is all observing together, all observing and making some layers of sharing. Maybe faculty share among themselves to see how students are performing. And then, of course, I do not emphasize too much on knowledge, but I already mentioned that interpreting knowledge, integrating knowledge. Are they able to integrate? Are they synthesizer in their skill? Do they have synthesis as skill? Can they synthesize things together and form new things? That means they can integrate and extend their knowledge. So, integrate, extend and expand the knowledge in a way. So then theories, do they understand the concepts of theories, models, and principles that are essential to understanding of each science? Now, the issue is now moving from one discipline to the other. So really now, if I have time, few minutes, 10 minutes or so, we'll now going to be cutting across discipline issues. Because collaboration is cutting across disciplines first in the mind and then with the humans. So this knowledge has to now move across the disciplines. Knowledge is all one as a tree. However, we have our own ways of dividing them into life sciences, physical sciences, engineering sciences, earth sciences. Even in engineering we have further branches, etc. And we are happy with our own compartments then. Well, this issue is to expand. First integrate, go across the disciplines. So there is another quote here, presenting a body of knowledge to students, whether it is in telling them more of showing them better. So telling them or showing them will not suffice in order for students to understand. So this is not sufficient for them to understand, memorize and internalize that knowledge. Every student must individually and personally construct each bit of understanding. Many times you find that students do have this, they have a lecture, teaching in the class, and some good ones, of course, they have individual own study and then understanding. So you need to respect that they have their private study and there is a group study. What we do is only group study in a class. Rarely you will have individual counseling and other situations, but they have their individual time. Their own learning is individual. Your teaching will be group. So we need to take care of that also and personally construct each bit of understanding. So they have to make each bit of understanding themselves through what you give. That is you can say digestion of that knowledge, and they have to use some tools. You may help them some tools that they are appropriate for them. Everybody may not be equal in that sense. For at her or his disposal, namely her or his own ideas and thought processes, there is some quote here, 1990. So there is a very individualistic touch also there, despite teaching in a class or as a group. We need to see that they are individually developing. That has been the focus right from the beginning also. Where faculty is individual, a student is also an individual in the society. So we need to respect that privacy and individual understanding and individual development and taking care of all the issues that we raised toward that atomic level of organization. That is the student level. Now this, again, research that I did also indicated but not much of variations are visible in terms of mask that I said that time, that is knowledge, motivation, attitude, skill and knowledge. And you may be surprised that knowledge at higher level actually is the lowest here. But this is what, maybe from the training, that is short-term training, 6 months training that they had, that faculty, and actually these questions were mixed, so this is an indication of how these 4 attributes increased due to training or were important for the long term. So there is a mix of queries that were there. However, you can see that probably attitude is shown to be the highest here, that is the lowest rank, that is the highest valuable, and then was of course these differences are not very substantial, so it may not be very conclusive, but I am sharing with you that they consider attitude is improved in training and attitude is also important for the career. So these 4 are actually, the first is actually for the career, the first bar, and the second bar is for from the industry again for the career. So faculty and industry variations are also visible here, minor variations are visible, and faculty and industry were also looking at short term, that is 6 months training. So whether they are important for the career or they are improved during the training. So these were the graphs indicating. I cannot say they are very conclusive. However, that from the faculty and industry, it was visible that they are considering at that final year level of engineering that attitude and skills are playing some role, prime role, and then motivation and knowledge are playing this next level role. However, you may or may not agree with all that. This was based on, say, about more than 100 students and 20 to 25 faculty and 20 to 25 industry professionals. So it was that kind of model sample that we took. So it is just to share with you that there are variations in those traits. There are variations in observations are also from faculty and industry professionals. And of course, there are major, some of them, as I mentioned, attitude and skill after the graduation remain. That is as far as the observations from these 2 members are concerned, that is faculty and industry. And then now it's the time to integrate and conclude that we say that disciplines have to be unified. How do you unify it? I gave you examples. Do you take examples of energy as a unifying element? Yes. There are naturally energy, environment remain the unifying for all engineering. So that way you can go across the discipline. There are few parameters of engineering and science, of course, that bind them together, and some of them isolate. It appears that we have taken only one half. So this lecture as such has been always to make the 2 halves, the 2 sides as balanced. So how do we go across the disciplines? And as I mentioned, ACSR, particularly in CSR, we do research to connect disciplines. We are not pure sciences or pure engineering or pure fields. All our research is toward merging of one engineering, one science area, science and engineering, anything, mix of fields together. So we in a way are giving this point for you also towards unifying concepts, key ideas, and underlying the integrating different scientific disciplines. So can we see the common? Can we correlate? Do we see analogies? Let me tell you personally, I have seen this is missing in general. I see when we see institutions is when we interact with students or in a presentation, we find sometimes faculty actually missing these, particularly integrating, unifying, concepts of scientific knowledge. So they're into of their own subjects, very much into their own. So that shows that they are ready for this kind of unification. So, but this is again a provocation to you to carry home. So there are tools and concepts, and I gave you example of say energy, speed of light. Speed of light will not change if you are doing mechanical engineering or electrical engineering or any engineering that you are doing, anything, speed of light will remain. I mean, that way, nothing will change in science actually. It's only that we have our own way of dividing the things. So if we keep those parameters, measurements, understanding, tools, concepts which are unifying, then we can bind them together. We can go across the disciplines. We can talk to other disciplines. Let me tell you, we have defined terms like civilionics, which is civil engineering and electronics engineering. In CSI we have agrionics. This is agriculture, agri-instrumentation, agriculture engineering and electronics engineering. You will find mechatronics. You have optomechatronics. You have what not you have, there are so many. You have optomechatronics. You have MEMS, micro, mechanical, electrical, machines. So there are no opto, MEMS, nano. There are no fields now which are not married with others. So if you want to produce something new now, marry with others. That's what I can say. Don't remain isolated. Don't remain single in your field now. Just mingle now. Better. It's time. There cannot be worse or better provocation than that. So you can marry some other also field wife or husband, if that way, physically, if you want to be that way. So if you are really single, so you have to do now integration. This is time to do that. That's the point here, that you need to get into integration mode. Connect now. Do the synthesis. Engineering have this basic trait of joining the things together, not just physically, but now intellectually, conceptually, through tools that require, through experiments, through things that you can do. So linkages. So you have to see what remains constant. I just mentioned speed of light will remain constant. So use that as a kind of parameter or concept that is on constant. What remains constant and what will change? Some absorption will change in one material to the other, but certain things may not change. So you have to see what changes and what doesn't change. Energy. I don't need to say, as a conceptual tool you can see that we will do conservation of science always in our experiments or in our system analysis. Energy management, energy efficiency. When you take it, car, whether it's electrical, mechanical or hybrid, you will have energy efficiency anyway. Then you will know what is the issue. That way you can use it as a tool. Concept and tool to join disciplines, and now you know that products are coming up without, there's no product without merger of. Earlier we used to say a product, I used to feel that a product is made of many scientific principles. Now you know that there are a lot of engineering, and every product will have all branches of engineering. It has all marketing, economics, social, everything into it. So we need to get into that unifying. Engineers particularly cannot be away from society. So they had to have this unifying approach. So they need to have protocols for describing and classifying. Making groups, need to oversee now. Start overseeing now. Not just observe. Observe from multiple perspectives and join them. That is the skill at a faculty level. When we have as a model, then we give it to the students. So when we have our attitudes clearly integrating and cutting across the discipline, then students will also follow. Students are following what we are having in our own minds. So systems and interactions. You need to know systemic sense. They say, can you have a systemic sense? Can you see the whole? They say sum is more than the whole. So that way, whole, you need to see whole and individual, synthesize, analysis. Sometimes you need to go microscopic, sometimes you need to have, macroscopic. Do we have this kind of zooming in our analysis? So do we take parts or do we take whole also? Now at the end, few things that kind of provocation further. Are we doing like that every now and then? That interacting with other professional people, or do we go once in a 5 year, or how often we do this? Are we adding some vocabulary to our day-to-day knowledge? Are we adding keywords? Did we have new keywords? Probably this presentation may not have given you any new words. So this is a provocation that with all old stuff, we are giving you a new thinking, or a new way if you can. Are we increasing the knowledge? Do we have our heuristic? This is only knowledge-centric provocation, as if only knowledge. But yes, if knowledge, as I mentioned, if knowledge is incrementing, probably you have the right motivation, you have the right skills, and you have the right attitude. So have you made some unifications? Have you made some correlations? Let me show you again. I have seen students sometimes giving an answer through analogy, and a faculty saying, no, don't give me that kind of answer. Give me the answer indirectly meant what is given in the book. Don't give me an example. Give me an answer. So your students sometimes are unable to express through the exact wording. So I have seen this, I am sharing this with pain that I have witnessed myself at times that he says, no, don't give me that example. The boy was giving the concept of pipelining through how utensils are washed in his house by a maid servant. Now, this example could not be accepted by the faculty. So this pipelining, I will not say. You put the utensils, you first put them, say, with soap, and then put them in water. He was trying to give example of pipelining. Faculty said, no, don't give me that example. I mean, I'm really pained to see at times. We need to see that there are analogies. We need to be ready, open-minded. But do we understand their understanding? Do we unify our own, attitudes also? Our respect to individual as a human. So education is not just materialistic. That's what I'm trying to say here. There has to be a lot of analogy. Analogies are part of moving from one subject to the other, or unifying the two. If you see that many equations, many formulas in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, you find there are a lot of models which are same. In fact, mathematically, if you find they use the same mathematics. First order differential equation, second order differential, you will find that only the properties are changed, the mechanical parameters, electrical parameters, magnetic parameters, and whatnot. So, do we see similarity and diversity? Can we see both at a time? That is the, if you can't see them, you will not be able to link the two together. So these are protocols for describing, and I have already mentioned, I think these. Oh, sorry, we have already done this. Okay. Conclusion on the two issues. Simple conclusion is to say that these are sides of the coin, sides of the same coin, and this is just to give you the coin. This is the simplest conclusion that I could do, because I'm not here to make conclusion on what is so well known globally. It is just to share with you through emotions, through feelings, through provocation, through introspection. So there are no new conclusions truly. Of course, there are lessons to carry, and I don't want to give my own. Probably the whole material has been a revisit of what we had, and it just says, if it is not readable, I'll just read a quote. It says, you will never change your life until you change something you do daily. The secret of your success is found in your daily routine. So that behavior, routines, attitude, skill, performances are all very organically linked with your own daily routines and every moment we spend with it. So thank you very much, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. I don't know if time.
So just from the other centers, they may be having some questions. We can just.
Morning. Thank you.
Morning.
Yeah.
सर बस क्वेश्चन थोड़ा से Are there any questions from Narendra Polytechnic Center, Richmond there? Any questions, please?
Hello. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Sir, my query is, how can polytechnic colleges contribute in research?
Okay. So the question is that polytechnic institutions, so is it to imply that you lack some infrastructure?
Yes, sir, I am not getting your voice properly.
Let me tell you, research does not require heavy capital or infrastructure. It is just an attitude or an inquisitive mind.
No, sir, I just...
So please do not carry the assumption that, let me tell you, when we project for funds in a project, any project which is highly capital intensive is taken seriously. That this project will not do much, it will only buy the equipment. So let us not carry, although I do not undermine the importance of facilities and infrastructure, however, let us not assume that polytechnics are kind of anyway inferior in terms of infrastructure. Maybe yes, there are some variations, but you need to have infrastructure that is required for your own level of experimentation. I believe that much you have. Or is there some absolute lack of it? Is that?
We have...
So kindly let us not carry this assumption that only costly equipment is what makes the research. So let us not take that way and see this is also initial question to see how we can do with resources. You know, whatever resources you have, you say Raman did his research in the bathroom. He had a bathroom size laboratory. Let me not say that it is only, and he built his own instruments. So, of course, that is not to say straightway for the today's situation, but I would request that yes, if that is the case, let us first make effort to see that the directors, the institution leaders, and any management considers favorably if there are any requirements of funding. I can only request wherever possible. But let us also not assume as a faculty that it's only the high costly equipment, fancy equipment that does research. Does that help you a little bit?
Okay, I have fully agreed with you, sir.
Sorry?
Fully agreed with you, sir.
Yeah, please carry it for some time, take it from me, and then you will grow even with what infrastructure you have, and then you will attract more infrastructure. Let me assure you that way. So you do little bit and then invite or attract for funding of extra infrastructure. I am sure, let me tell you, funding institutions are looking for such institutions where they show good results. You just show good results and you will have funding for it. So initially, yes, it may appear challenging. I hope it helps you.
Thank you, sir. Any other question? Any question from Baba Fried Institute of Management and Technology, Bathinda?
Excuse me, ma'am. Just one more thing.
Yeah, please.
Sorry.
Our industrial background guest has just been arrived, so I just want to introduce him.
Industry?
Industrial based guest.
Sorry, industrial?
Background guest.
They don't have industrial background.
Industrial background guest, you can introduce them.
Okay.
Industrial background, yes.
Okay, do you want to interface with industry better?
Yes, sir. His name Girdhari Lalji Bhaskar. He is CEO in Navratna Industries and they are dealing with fencing materials. Just want to have some conversation with you.
They have called the industry person.
Okay, please. Okay. Go ahead.
Panel discussion, excuse me, will be at starts at 2 p.m. as it's indicated in the timetable also. So now we switch to the any question from Baba Fried Institute of Management and Technology. Anji? अच्छा Ankit. Any question from the studio? Any question from studio?
Journal. Okay, let me share you 3 journals where I published that work. One is the International Journal of Engineering Education, which is, I believe, available in this library itself, which was my first publication of this research. And then there is the European Journal of Engineering Education. There was the second paper was published in that. And let me also tell you, there is an Indian Journal of Training and Development, which was my third publication out of the same one. So it's not just this is not the whole set of journals. There will be huge number of other journals available. So let me assure you, you pick up any research topic, you will just hold your head that there are hundreds of journals available. So much of research has been done by the world. What was I doing earlier? If you do not feel this, please come to me. You tell me anything that you want to start, you will find the world has done a lot before that. So please let us accept this first fact and then go ahead. Let us join this research approach.
What are the journals you told? Those are not SCI journals.
No, this area is slightly education research. So I'm not talking about SCI actually. For your own field, you do SCI journals. This is more like education research. This is for education research, I'm saying. For your own subject or whatever branch you have, you need to see journals of that area. They are all SCI journals available. Huge. Now there is a proliferation. Huge. The problem is now there are more journals than researchers. The way it appears. There was mushrooming of institutions in the country. Now there is a. See, let us not have this bad reputation of producing only quantities.
So what is policy matters? Why don't they produce these kind of institutions? Some of them are in the policy matters. There are suggestions or maybe the chairman also.
Yes.
Where you control the institutions? The muscles of institutions are increasing.
Okay, you mean the body is not controlled?
Yes.
Yes. Now is the time that we have grown uncontrollably. We had this population problem earlier. Now we have mushrooming of institutions, then mushrooming of... Yes, definitely, I think it has gone out of control, and if not controlled by the bodies, let me tell you, market forces are also controlling. See, this is time to consolidate now. They are unifying themselves. If you don't do it, nature will do it, market will do it, society will do it. Yes, I am sure that you are right.
People are talking about the stakeholders. They are not concerned about the
Yes.
They are killing the stakeholder symbols and such a way that the entire society is moving in towards one way. So indirectly the body is also encouraging.
Yes, society, see, very rightly you said, and this was part of the presentation when I said engineers, are they aware, are they sensitive to their own benefits or benefits of the society and benefits of the environment? If by and large all of us decide not to worry about society, then we'll produce this kind of output. We all are like, majority is doing like that, then the society wants that way. Till the society itself finds a shock, a hit from the natural, resource problem. Yes, so if this problem is in a small scale, then the forces will correct it. If it doesn't do, if all of us want to do, we can have any kind of society. There are societies in the other countries. I don't need to name. You can have any kind of society. There can be no law. There can be anarchy. You can have Stone Age. You can have only when there is a crime, you put stones to the criminal and then everybody carrying. You can have any kind of society.
We have to balance the society. That means we need some desert.
Yeah, there is some kind of leadership, some kind of faculty. The educated class have to see. That's where now you are realizing that we have done some wrong in the past. We have not controlled it. We have produced some manpower which is not sensitive to all that STSC. They were sensitive to only self. They understand only the benefits that they incur from it. And if many of us are like that, then God saves us. I mean, then the situation is slightly in that direction, but I believe there are natural corrections also, and they take more time. And they are more... So if you are not value added in our services, the results are that there is no output also, no quality output. We might have produced numbers, we have not generated the quality. And educated class has to take a lead now. Faculty, researchers, well decision, I gave you the importance of making right decisions. If you are allowing to make decisions without research, as you said, without controlling and letting them do more and more, that means not only we as individuals, but as a group, as a body, as a controlling body, as a policy maker, we have ignored. Yes, there has been, and there are corrections to follow now. Yeah, please, any other?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for a topic of this nature. Thank you very much.
I, on behalf of the nodal centers at Lakshmangarh, Bhatinda, and participants from MNIT Jaipur and other participants in this studio and from our own institute, profusely thank you, sir, for the enlightening talk on teaching and research. You, in a beautiful way, explained what engineers need to know with the example taking just of a tree. And starting from the basic terms like what is engineering, what is research, you beautifully took us to the strategies, to the ways that the teachers should incorporate in their teaching to make sure that your students good observers, providing them exposure for developing skills like curiosity, creativity, interpreting, making predictions which are rightly required in the conduct of any research work. Lastly, you brought us to creating linkages among disciplines and making reference of those things in day-to-day teaching. So we can say one can be good in teaching, effective teacher. One can be good in research, and you have joining the two was a challenging job, which you did in an excellent way. Thank you, sir. Now we will be breaking for tea break for 20 minutes. We will reassemble at 11:45. Huh?
Yeah.
No, for MNIT, I think Dr. Tulsi will tell you. For the centers and at participants in the studio, we will meet after 20 minutes. 12 बजे मिलते हैं. Thank you.